This is East Asia Tonight.
Good Thursday evening. I'm Oteli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. The strongest typhoon to hit Taiwan in 8 years barrels through the island, killing at least 3 people and sinking an offshore freighter. Now, a rebel group claims victory in Myanmar's Shan state, shredding a China-brokered truce as ASEAN ministers meet in Laos with the region's unrest at the top of its agenda. Also, U.S. and Canadian warplanes intercept Chinese and Russian bomber jets in international airspace near Alaska. Beijing and Moscow both say that the joint patrol is not aimed at any third party. And a surprise off-cycle interest rate cut by China's central bank. We take a look at whether that's enough to jolt companies and consumers into spending more. Also on East Asia tonight, the Paris Olympics just a day away. We assess the region's sporting powerhouses' medal prospects at the Summer Games. Taiwan's fire department says that a Tanzania-flagged freighter carrying 9 Myanmar nationals has sunk off the coast of the southern port city of Kaohsiung as Typhoon Gaemi batters the island. Well, emergency officials say they abandoned ship and are floating in the sea with life jackets. A search operation is underway, though rescuers are facing difficulties due to the stormy weather. Well, Gaemi made landfall in Taiwan last night, wreaking havoc even before touching its coast. Torrential rains and strong winds lashed the self-ruled island. At least 3 people have died, and more than 200 others were also left injured. And close to 300,000 homes plunged into darkness due to power outages. Well, heavy rains triggered by Typhoon Gaemi also devastating neighboring Philippines. Authorities are racing to contain a spill that could potentially be the biggest in the country's history after a tanker carrying 1.4 million liters of industrial fuel oil sank in rough seas in Manila Bay. A Typhoon Gaemi is now barreling towards China and is expected to hit Fujian later today. The eastern coastal province has suspended all train services and issued the second highest flood warning alert level. And for more, Victoria Jen, she joins us live now from Taipei. Victoria, just sum this up for us. Just how badly hit was Taiwan, and which are some of the worst hit areas?
Yes, Oteli. Right now, I'm in Taipei City in northern Taiwan. And that is actually, as you can see, there is barely any rain or any wind. But the situation is very different in central and southern part of Taiwan. In fact, heavy rains and strong winds are battering these areas as we speak. Now, the cities such as Hualien and Kaohsiung are among the worst hit areas where most casualties and injuries have been reported. Now we're seeing that flooding in many parts of the low-lying areas, and also we are seeing trees being uprooted and rooftops being blown off. And we have also seen video footage of showing people wading through floodwater to get to food and clean water. Now, there have also been reports saying that there have been landslides in mountainous areas. So right now, it's really hard to assess exactly how much the economic losses that this typhoon has caused. But officials expect that this is going to be significant. And the flooding so far has already caused severe damage to the agricultural sector. Agricultural damage is estimated to have exceeded $1.5 million. And this number is expected to increase as we expect more rains to hit the central and southern part of Taiwan in the coming days.
Victoria, recovery efforts must be in full swing now. How exactly are authorities helping?
Yes, well, this is the first typhoon that has hit Taiwan this year, and probably the worst in 8 years. Weather Bureau has estimated that this typhoon has brought more than 2,000 millimeters of rainwaters to Taiwan. That is equivalent to the average rainfall that Taiwan gets a year. So you can imagine that's a lot of rainwater that is being squeezed into Taiwan in such a short period of time. So clearly, the government is on high alert. President William Lai had visited the Central Emergency Center and alerted all the local governments to do their best to minimize damage. And also, the military has canceled its annual Hanguang military exercises and deployed 30,000 troops to help with the rescue and emergency situation. And also, hundreds of international and domestic flights have been canceled. Other major public transportation, such as trains and high-speed rail, have also been temporarily suspended. Schools and work have been suspended for 2 days, and this despite the fact that some analysts estimate that this could cost at least $1 billion in economic losses. But the governments believe that the people's safety is the top priority. And they are urging the public to stay on high alert because there are expected to be more rains in the coming days, especially in the central and southern part of the island.
Well, thanks very much, Victoria Jen, for that report, reporting to us live from Taipei. Turning our attention to other news, Myanmar's ruling military and an ethnic armed group are both claiming that they are in control of a town and military command in the country's northern Shan state. It comes after days of clashes, resulting in the breakdown of a ceasefire brokered by China. Well, intense fighting has been ongoing in Lashio since the start of the month. Just days earlier, an alliance of armed groups agreed to extend a Beijing-brokered truce amid a renewed offensive against the military. Well, Lashio has a highway linked to China's Yunnan province. And today, one of the groups in the alliance says that they captured a regional military command in Lashio and the town itself. Myanmar's ruling military refutes those claims. Lashio is home to some 150,000 people and has been at the center of airstrikes and intense clashes this month, resulting in a number of civilian deaths. All of this taking place in the backdrop of a key regional meeting of ASEAN foreign ministers in Laos, with the ongoing crisis in Myanmar set to be a focal point for the group. The leaders also set to grapple with a range of other issues facing the region too, including tensions in the South China Sea. ASEAN ministers will engage other partners, including Russia, China and the US, later this week, with Secretary of State Antony Blinken expected to meet his counterpart Wang Yi in Vientiane. And our correspondent Liang Wai-kit in Vientiane spoke to a member of the Myanmar delegation who said that they are confident that the military will normalize ties with ASEAN very soon.
The delegation said that based on its own perceived effort and actions about what it's been doing in Myanmar, it is confident that normalization could come very soon. The delegation also told me that the Myanmar army is now planning to hold elections and it is seeking the international support and not criticism, something which the international community might find very hard to do given that there are so many questions revolving around these planned elections, including whether or not they can be held when violence is still ongoing, including whether or not the planned polls would be free and fair. Now, just a quick note on the elections. At least 2 sources have told me that Army Jim Min Aung Hlaing plans to hold those polls in 2025, in November. That's because he needs to move his trusted and loyal aides across the political spectrum to secure victory. Now, discussions between ASEAN and Myanmar aren't only confined to high-level meetings such as this one in Vientiane. There are other platforms where both sides are talking, and the Myanmar military, starting this year, has stepped up diplomatic engagements with ASEAN. Many say that this is because the military needs to balance its strategy, given that it is losing ground on the battlefield. In fact, just earlier today, an ethnic armed group, MNDAA, claims that it has taken over the Myanmar junta's northeastern military regional headquarters in Lashio. Now, if this claim were true, it is going to be significant on 2 key points. One, sources have told me before that in the past, MNDAA had attempted to take over last year, but that attempt was thwarted by China. So you can imagine that if this claim were true, the implications would be that it might anger Beijing. The second significant point is that if this regional command has indeed fallen, then this will be the first and highest level of the Myanmar army defeat in the independence or in the history of Myanmar since independence.
Coming up next on East Asia Tonight, youngsters in China are ditching big brands for bargain buys, from yoga pants to coffee. Who's cashing in and who's getting left behind? Expert analysis ahead. Hello again. Good to have you back on East Asia Tonight. It is now time for your business news with Roland Lim. And Roland, China's central bank delivered a second surprise this week.
That's right, Otelli. It's lowered another key rate today in an off-cycle decision. The People's Bank of China, PBOC, surprised markets with an off-cycle rate cut. Today's move after the central bank unexpectedly lowered a series of key rates, signaling the urgency in which China is trying to shore up its fragile growth. Now, the PBOC slashed the rate on its one-year medium-term lending facility, or MLF, by 20 basis points to 2.3%. And that's the biggest cut since April of 2020. The central bank typically conducts its medium-term loan operations the middle of the month. Now, it trimmed the MLF last in August of 2023. The PBOC also surprised markets on Monday when it delivered a 10 basis point cut to its short-term policy rate. It also authorized commercial banks to reduce the one-year loan prime rate, or LPR, and the five-year equivalent. Now, the one-year LPR is a benchmark for corporate lending. The five-year LPR serves mainly as a basis for mortgage loans. However, major Chinese banks taking their cues from the PBOC's policy tweaks, ICBC and Agricultural Bank of China, have cut their deposit rates in a move that eases the pressure on bank margins with the aim of redirecting savings to consumption. The Greater Chinese stock market, though, not impressed with the surprise cut. The Shanghai Composite closed at its lowest level since February. The second bourse, the Shenzhen component, also slipping 0.2%. Biggest loser of the day is the benchmark Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong, slumping 1.8%, its lowest close in 3 months, led by banking counters. Now, as China's economic recovery sputters, with much slower than expected growth in the second quarter, global brands in the country are navigating a new spending trend where consumers ditch branded goods for lower priced and sometimes no-name substitutes. CNA's Deborah Wong explains.
Ping tea, or cheaper substitutes, is one of the most searched terms by young people in China in 2023. The internet slang refers to a rising consumption trend in post-pandemic China, where consumers seek cheaper substitutes for everything. From gourmet coffee selling at 990 yuan, or about $1.30 a cup, to yoga pants that cost just a fraction of the price of their imported rivals. On top of being cheaper, these substitutes are often unbranded and locally made. Local media hail it as the rise of a new generation of consumers who no longer blindly pursue big brands and expensive items.
日用消费品，然后像面霜的话，就有一些国产品牌现在都有很好的成分，然后可能差价能到800-900，就比起原来的产品。然后还有像衣服的话，像现在的一些国潮，它都有自己的品牌个性，所以我觉得它就是也不仅仅是价格层面的，它的整个那个品牌个性等等方面，我觉得都还是能打动现在年轻的消费者的。对。
之前比较喜欢用的那种，就是用的那种笔，就是日本进口的，像斑马，比如说百乐这种。然后后面因为单价比较贵嘛，然后后续的话又买了一些，就是小米这种牌，有个聚能血嘛，然后1块钱一支那种就可以，就是比较好的平替了。
But the fact that young Chinese are picking up the old virtue of being thrifty spells bad news for global brands such as Uniqlo. The Japanese retail giant recently reported a sharp fall in its China sales. Management blamed it partly on the pink tea trend. As Chinese consumers are being thriftier, household savings are growing steadily. total household deposits amounted to 137 trillion yuan, or about $19 trillion in 2023. A trend that economists say will work against the government's goal of boosting domestic consumption. At the recently concluded third plenum of the Communist Party of China, among other key goals, leaders pledged to actively expand domestic demand over the next 5 years.
Now, for a more in-depth look at what the ping tea trend means for the broader Chinese economy, I'm joined now by Tianchen Qi, who is the senior economist from the Economist Intelligence Unit, EIU, in Beijing. Deborah Wong, CNA's China correspondent, also joining us, and given her knowledge on the topic, will probably be asking some questions of her own. Deborah, let's start with you. From your report, Chinese firms are gaining at the expense of foreign labels, even mass-market ones like Uniqlo. But domestic consumption still not strong enough to drive overall sales?
Well, Roland, we just heard from Chinese consumers that they are more price conscious now, and that's actually affected the overall Q2 GDP growth rate in China. In fact, retail sales growth fell short at about 2%, with big ticket items like cars and luxuries being the hardest hit. For Uniqlo, that company is reconsidering its strategy in China. So what it's doing is that it's making sure, it's made clear that it is not downsizing, but it will be closing down shops that are, not in well-performing areas and opening shops that are in better locations. It's also planning to expand its e-commerce presence, hoping that its sales on the e-commerce platforms could account for 30%, up from the 25%. And e-commerce does seem like a smart way to go right now, because it has taken off in China due to rapid internet adoption as well as lower operating fees. But what is also interesting is that sellers now need to be more well-resourced in order to deal with the competitive price wars on e-commerce platforms. And another trend that we are noticing that is spurred by poor domestic consumption is that many Chinese companies are looking to venture overseas. We have done a report in Hong Kong most recently on mainland F&B companies setting up shop here in the city because of its popularity, and also because the sales back in mainland China is going down. And many companies do see Hong Kong as a sandbox of sorts before it goes to its global expansion, because of the relatively international demographic that Hong Kong has. And one example also on how successful companies are is Guangzhou lifestyle brand Miniso. And that company found that overseas spenders are less price sensitive. In fact, its overseas revenue accounts for close to 33% of its total revenue in just the first quarter. And it also plans to add over 1,000 stores, with over half of them being overseas stores by this year. And then we also have Urban Revival. It's another Chinese fashion retailer that rivals brands like H&M and Zara, because it is cheaper, and it also does offer a wide range of trendy options. And that brand hopes to open about 50 overseas stores in the long term, including setting up in major fashion hubs like New York and London. So they have very big ambitions. Now, a question for Mr. Xu. Even as Chinese firms look to overseas shoppers who are less price sensitive, the home market still remains significant. With a series of interest rates cuts, including surprise one today, will that encourage local consumers to spend more?
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. I think as a consumer, you ultimately need to see robust income growth, or at least improvements to your personal finances before you really want to spend. Yeah, and the issue in China now is that the country cannot offer a lot of decent and well-paid jobs. Yeah, and instead many are doing gig work, which is providing less of social security. Yeah, and it's also offering relatively lower incomes. Yeah, so I would say that 1 or 2 rate cuts won't make a lot of difference. Yeah, and after all, the magnitude of the cut is not that big. Yeah, but let's say over the long run, if you have many cuts and maybe the government also increases fiscal spending, yeah, and especially targeting them towards the consumers, and then you will create more growth and bring more jobs, and that will probably help people and incentivize them to spend. Yeah, so ultimately, I think the government needs to be much bolder about supporting the economy. Yeah, and that could be probably better for consumption.
Tension with Chinese consumers right now reluctant to spend, savings trapped in China, as one prominent U.S. economist, Adam Posen, who also served at the Fed as well as the Bank of England, said last week. I want you to have a quick listen to what he said.
The upshot of this from a macro perspective, which is why you and I know each other for so long, is that I think you're trapping a lot of savings in China. Some of it will get out to other places than the U.S., but there aren't that many other places, especially if Europe can't make up its mind how it's going to play things. And so in this security environment, and there's more savings being held in China. At the same time that people in China would like to diversify more, and they're not allowed. And she is directing more of the savings and lending, in particular, to the state-owned enterprises. So what does that mean? It basically raises, as an additional factor, raising the safe interest rate, the U.S. Treasury 10-year rate.
So, Tianchen, can you break it down for the layman, what this all means for the Chinese economy and for Chinese consumers?
Yeah. So I think the key issue is about consumption. Yeah, because consumption is important to every economy. It translates into the income of another person or another enterprise, which will use the income to consume or to invest. Yeah, hence we have this economic circulation. Yeah, so basically we can say that there's a multiplier effect, which is $1 spent by a consumer, creating maybe $6 or $8 of economic value added. Yeah, but if consumers, they don't spend, then other people or other enterprises, they won't have income. Yeah, and as a result, they won't have, they can't use that income to spend or to invest. Yeah, and as a result, the economic circulation will stall. There won't be any sort of those multiplier effects. Yeah, and this will be trouble for the economy. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what's happening in China, especially since mid-2024, because people are suddenly becoming, amid the COVID restrictions, they're suddenly becoming more cautious about spending. They're suddenly becoming much more worried about their future. Yeah, and hence they are accumulating their spending instead of accumulating their savings instead of spending. Yeah, and that has been the case. I mean, over the past 2 years, and we haven't really have a way out of this situation. Yep.
Mr. Xu, I'm just also curious. You know, we talked about a lot of we talked about economic downturn. We talked about quite negative prospects. But I'm just curious to find out whether there are any bright spots. You know, are there any sectors in China that are benefiting from the higher savings rate?
Yeah, I would say that overall it will be bad news for maybe a lot of sectors, especially if you are running some consumer businesses, yeah, and if you are running a travel agency or something else. Yeah, so it will be a bad news for them. Yeah, but on the other hand, economically speaking, high savings mean high investment, because essentially banks or other financial institutions, they will take the savings and direct them to entities in need of the money via, for example, bank lending or equity investments. And in China, I think it is a little bit special because these financial resources tend to be directed by the government towards some priority areas, for example, to manufacturers for their capital expenditure, and probably also to government entities or state-owned enterprises for infrastructure projects. Yeah, so I would say those firms or those entities, they have been really the beneficiaries over the past couple of years. Yeah, also because that the actual demand for credit, for borrowing in the real economy among consumers or among private entrepreneurs are quite low, and as a result, banks or financial institutions they are really lending those money towards the manufacturers and the government entities. Yeah.
Tianchen, speaking of corporates, many are also choosing to invest in Chinese government bonds, and that's been driving bond yields to record low. Now, longer term, though, what would be the impact of this to the Chinese economy?
Yeah, I think it will be a double-edged sword, in my view. So we have the positive side and the negative side. I think the positive side is since the government bond yield is the so-called risk-free rate, underpinning all of the lendings, underpinning all of the financial instruments, a lower government bond yield will actually translate into lower borrowing costs. Yeah, so lower borrowing costs will be a good thing for the economy. Yeah, because you don't really have a lot of debt to service. You don't have a lot of interest to repay. Yeah, so that's the good thing. But there's also the flip side. I think, especially on capital flows, because when you just have your government bond yields offering returns of a little just over maybe 2% per year, global investors will reconsider their investments, whether it is worthwhile to invest in Chinese bonds, or whether there's enough return to compensate for the risk. In China, they will have a lot of questions on that. Yeah, and if capital owners are hesitant to invest in China, it will carry, I would say, negative consequences. For example, it will add some pressure towards your exchange rate. Yeah, because capital is not going into China, it's going out of China. Yeah, and there's also the broader, let's say, the U.S.-China interest rate differentials, yeah, which are important considerations for global investors to when they allocate their capital. Yeah, so probably if the whole sort of things, I mean, a weak economic prospect, a low yields, or if they are sustained for a little bit longer, then I would say it would be pretty bad for let's say, restoring the confidence among investors in China.
We'll definitely be keeping an eye on those yields. We've run out of time. Tianchen Shi from the Economist Intelligence Unit and CNA's China correspondent, Deborah Wong, for a deep dive into the Chinese consumption market. Now, coming up on East Asia Tonight, the world's second biggest memory chip maker, SK Hynix, posting a solid quarterly report, but its stock slumped the most in 20 months. We'll have this and more business stories up ahead.
Gaemi, the strongest typhoon to hit Taiwan in 8 years, barrels through the island, killing at least 3 people and sinking an offshore freighter. ASEAN foreign ministers begin their meeting in Laos, with the violence in Myanmar and tensions in the South China Sea among the top issues on the agenda. And a surprise off-cycle interest rate cut by China's central bank just days after it trimmed a series of borrowing costs, signaling Beijing's urgency in shoring up its fragile growth. And here's Roland Lim once again for more business news. And Roland, it's all about the yen again we're talking about. Just weeks ago, I believe the headlines on the yen was just about how weak it was. And now it's actually staging a rebound?
Right, you are. What's happened is that a sharp jump in the yen is the market focus today. The currency surged to around 152.2 to the dollar, and that's the highest in 2.5 months. Now, more are betting that the interest rate gap between Japan and the US will narrow ahead of the Bank of Japan's meeting next week. Now, the yen's rebound hurting Japanese exporters, however, and that's led to the Nikkei 225 to plunge to a near 2-month low. South Korea's Kospi not spared from the selling either, logging in its biggest daily fall since mid-April. SK Hynix shares tumbling the most in 20 months, nearly 9% lower, in line with an overnight rout in tech stocks on Wall Street. Investors overlooking, however, a solid quarterly result from the South Korean chipmaker. A key supplier to AI darling NVIDIA, SK Hynix also forecasts a further rise in second-half chip demand. Now, SK Hynix reported an operating profit of close to $4 billion for the April to June quarter, and that's roughly in line with expectations and stands in contrast with its loss the same period last year. Revenue jumped 125% on year to a record quarterly high of nearly $12 billion. The world's second biggest memory chipmaker supplies is benefiting from the demand of high-end chips and solid-state drives after its early investments in those segments. Now, SK's parent, that's SK Group, said that it plans to spend $77 billion on semiconductors and AI over the next 5 years. Now, 80% of that will be on AI. Honda Motor plans to cut its production capacity in China by a third to cope with falling sales. According to a Nikkei report, it would be for petrol-fueled vehicles, and the cut would equate to about 10% of Honda's global output. The Japanese carmaker will shut 3 of its 7 production lines in China, the world's biggest auto market. Now, in its first cutback in China, the closure will slash Honda's annual capacity for gasoline cars to 1 million from 1.5 million. This also marks the biggest reduction by any Japanese automaker there in the current downturn. Honda is holding discussions with joint venture partner GAC Group and Dongfeng Motor Group. It's expected to make an official decision this year. Scaling back production in China would mark a departure from an expansion strategy that goes back to the 90s for Honda. Japanese car makers have been struggling to keep up with their Chinese rivals as the country pivots to electric vehicles. Honda sales in the market slumped about 40% on year in the month of June alone. Now, its Japanese partner, Nissan Motor, closed a factory for gasoline vehicles in China last month, a move to cut its capacity by around 10%. Quick check on Honda shares. It closed nearly 2.8% in the red today. And with that, you're all caught up with the business news. So, Terry, it's back to you.
What a treat today. A big chunk from Business Desk. Thanks so very much, Roland.
You're very welcome.
Well, now, Chinese and Russian bomber jets have staged joint patrol of the waters of Chukchi and Bering Seas, located near far eastern Russia and the U.S. state of Alaska. Both sides have stressed that the drills were conducted in international airspace and in accordance to international laws. And they also emphasized that the exercise was to improve cooperation between the two air forces and was not aimed against any third party. The statements from China and Russia come after a joint U.S.-Canadian Defense Command reported intercepting 2 Chinese bombers and 2 Russian bombers in international airspace near Alaska on Wednesday. Time now for another break. But coming up next on East Asia Tonight, your Olympics preview. We size up the region's medal prospects, spotlight rising stars, and dive into the surge in doping tests among Chinese swimmers. The 2024 Olympics Games officially start tomorrow. Get ready for the ultimate showdown. We're talking about 32 electrifying sports, more than 300 gold medals up for the taking. And East Asian titans China, Japan, and South Korea have long been Olympic powerhouses, topping hundreds of podium finishes. Well, South Korea won 6 gold medals in Tokyo 4 years ago and 9 in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. Their best showings, though, were in London 2012 and Beijing 2008, scoring 13 goals each at those games. Now, South Korea is the undisputed archery powerhouse, snagging an incredible 27 gold medals since 1984. And that's ahead of the U.S. by 13 goals, which is their closest competitor. And their women's team is absolutely unbeatable, winning all of the team gold since the event was introduced in 1988. Right, let's look at Japan's Olympic record. Best performances were at the 1964 and 2020 Tokyo Games. And in the last outing, they won 27 golds. That's more than doubling their haul from Rio. Well, athletes are aiming to top that this time around. And not surprisingly, the Japanese dominate judo, a martial art originating in Japan. And they've racked up 48 gold medals and counting. Their closest rival, France, has just 16. And turning our attention to China, the Olympic medal machine had its best year in 2008 when the Games went to Beijing. The superpower bagged a whopping 48 golds that year. And in the last Olympics, China's gold tally was 38, just one medal shy of the U.S. in top spot. And the Middle Kingdom has ruled diving for years now. Chinese divers bagged 7 out of 8 gold medals at the Tokyo Games, which is one of the greatest performances in Olympic history. And state media say that the team is gunning for a complete gold sweep in Paris. And for more, my colleague Paul Sung, who is leading CNA's Olympics coverage, joins us in the studio for a chat. Now, Paul, not a lot of people know this, but my first presenting gig was with you.
Yes.
And it was at the 2004 Athens Games. I remember that was all it's about. So fast forward 20 years later, here we are again. Absolutely. So walk us through China's chances at this Paris Olympics Games.
Well, there's a real high possibility of a sweep, as you say, because when you look at the Asian countries, China has been consistently top 3 for the past however many Olympics, since Sydney 2000. And there is a poll, there's Nielsen's Grace Note virtual medal table, if I remember that correctly. Now, that basically predicts the individuals and the countries that will win gold, bronze and silver. And from their calculation, China will actually top the United States in terms of winning more gold medals than them. But unfortunately, coming in second, but that's a prediction. Having said that, China is sending a 716 delegation with 405 athletes competing in the various disciplines, just one athlete short of the number that they sent in Tokyo, which goes to show how committed they are in trying to win or maintain that dominance that they have among Asian nations.
716 delegation, that's a pretty huge number. But we can't deny that leading up to the Games, well, China has been sort of in the center of, or in the middle of a doping scandal that, has been reported. And how do you think this is going to affect their performance and even reputation to a certain extent?
Well, the doping scandal that you talk about came to surface in April, where New York Times, together with news agencies from Australia and Germany, reported that there were 23 athletes, particularly swimmers, who actually failed a drug test. They were tested positive for a banned substance, but they weren't, this was before the Tokyo Olympics, and they weren't suspended. In fact, 14 or 13 of them went on to participate in Tokyo and won 6 medals. So you can imagine the rage that are coming out from the competitors. Now, fast forward, today's predicament is the fact that 11 of those 23 athletes will be competing in Paris. And, well, you can just imagine how swimmers feel that they're unfairly treated to be competing against them. And there's a sports advocacy group called Global Athlete who has warned the Olympic organizers that should any of these 11 swimmers win a medal, there will be outrage and the athletes will probably protest. And also the advocacy group has said that they will probably publish the names of these Chinese athletes just to get back the integrity to the sport. Now, if you look broadly from a broader perspective about sports, China's domination in sports, well, there are 6 traditionally strong sports that they win their gold medals. In fact, with these 6 sports, they have accumulated more than 70% of the 298 medals that were won since 1984, which goes to show you that swimming may not be a real determinant in terms of their performance. But the fact that it's been such a controversial issue since April this year, it should, I think, cause a dent in their reputation.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep an eye out on the protest if and when it happens.
Definitely.
So Paul, I know that there's so many athletes. I'm wondering whether if you could pick out some of the Asian athletes or East Asian athletes we should be looking out for, any dark horses?
Olympics is a great platform in showcasing athletes. I mean, we see athletes that we've never heard of before, particularly Asian athletes, and perform winning gold medals. And here are some of a few athletes which I thought were pretty interesting to look out for. One being from Hong Kong. She's a swimmer. Her name is, get this, Chauvin Horway. She's of Irish descent. She has won silver in Tokyo, and over the years, or over this year actually, she's won a gold and a silver in the World Doha World Aquatics Championship. So she's pipped to win possibly Hong Kong's first gold medal. That's one swimmer that you should look out for. Okay. Also, in terms of gymnastics, which is a sport I like to watch during the Olympics, human agility and all that.
Absolutely.
But there's a Japanese, Hashimoto Daiki, who is just 22 years old. Well, he's the defending Olympic champion for the all-round and high bar, and he has also 4 world titles as well. Now, he'll be defending that title and also pipped to win. And seeing the Japanese in the sport, which they've thrived for most of the years, is pretty amazing. And
hopefully they won't be affected by that Japanese gymnast who was sent home for smoking.
There are controversial issues like that. Also, you cannot not mention any Asian athlete without mentioning a Chinese athlete. And I don't know whether you remember, back in Tokyo, there was a 14-year-old who won a gold medal in diving. Her name is Chen Hong Chen, and she's won gold. And more than that, she's actually scored 3 perfect dives. Now, if you're a fan of sport or if you're a fan of diving, you're never, ever, well, very rarely would you see a perfect dive. And she's gotten a reputation of actually diving close to perfection.
And if I'm not mistaken, she is diving so well in part because she needed funds, right, to help her mom out. Her mom was sick. So
it's what drives
amazing.
These athletes. It's what
amazing young
And she's 17 years old right now. She's got 4 world titles. And she's at it again. She's going to win gold, I think.
Yeah,
and
I'm really rooting
one
for
to watch.
her.
And if you've seen her demeanor, she's so quiet. She's just quietly confident now, as I would say.
I know. She's a beautiful diver. I'll certainly be looking out for that. And the other thing as well, I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm really looking out for this new sport that's taking place or going to be introduced at this upcoming Olympics, and that is breaking, or which is a form of break dancing as most people know it. And somehow there is this perception that Asians perhaps have an advantage in the sport. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I don't know about that, but based on the results, when you see, especially in the women's category, they're dominated by women. I mean, they're dominated by Asian women. Just in the preliminary rounds going into the qualifying rounds, there were 3 Japanese ladies who actually, swept the podium with their wins in Budapest by the name of Ayumi, Ami, and Riko. And one of them, if you thought that this sport was for the young, because of the adult, one of them is actually 40 years old.
No way.
And she's a former kindergarten teacher. So there's hope for you, Otelli.
There is, absolutely. I might be a few years older than that, but good to keep the hopes up. Okay, so all in, we are a day before the Summer Games kick off, and we have the opening ceremony as well. Anything interesting, exciting that we should be looking out for? Well,
I think the opening ceremony itself, it's going to be quite a spectacle because for the first time, it's not going to be in a stadium. It's going to be by the River Seine, as you know. And there's so much news leading up to this, the cleanliness of the river and all, but just seeing pictures of that, of the mock-ups of how you see these boats running through. It's pretty amazing, stunning.
Right, and the water looks clean enough.
I don't know about that, but good enough for them.
Good enough for us. Well, thanks so very much, Paul. Good to have sharing the same table as you again after 20 years. And that was my colleague, Paul Sung, who is taking charge of the CNA's Olympic team. Now, meantime, organizers of the Olympics are racing to make sure the River Seine is ready for the opening ceremony and safe enough for competition. But the river is not the only waterway in focus in the French capital, as Ross Cullen finds out.
Here in Tahiti's Teahupo, 2024's Olympic surfers are gearing up for competition thousands of miles away from Paris. Home to some of the world's best waves, Teahupo's signature barrels are unlike any other.
Energy in the channel is up. The swell has arrived.
Here's what makes them so special. Teahupo, which translates as pile of heads after a gruesome local legend, is a village on Tahiti's southwestern coast. It has been the venue for many of surfing's most exciting contests since it was revealed to the wider world in the 1990s. For Tahitian surfer Vahine Fierro, the sport is a part of the nation's culture and heritage.
It's good history, it's good reminder of how the Olympics are connected to the ocean, to the people, to the little villages.
The biggest waves rise some 32 feet, and though not as tall as those in Portugal's Nazare or Hawaii's Peahi, their explosive power and sheer volume of water sets Teahupo'o apart as a hydrodynamic freak of nature. That's thanks to its particular location and the seafloor below. The mountains of Tahiti's interior have channels that collect tropical rains and funnel them down to the shoreline. That river has flowed through Teahupo'o for thousands of years, and its fresh water prevents coral from growing in a deep channel it has eroded. A large trench provides an incredibly close and relatively safe spot for spectator boats while the judges watch from the reef. Swells travel from thousands of miles away before hitting a steep shelf and heaving upwards onto the shallow reef. The slope angle allows the waves to fold over, creating the famous barrels that track the line of the shelf. Here's what it looks like up top. Fierro dropped into a double overhead wave during a recent competition. Surfing here is about battling fear as much as battling an opponent. More points are scored for being deep inside a barrel, which raises the chance the wave will close out on top of them. Surfers can adjust speed to stay in the tube by dragging a hand to slow down or pumping the board to speed up. During this run, Fierro was enveloped for over 2 seconds, which is a long time in such an unstable environment. Surfers often say time slows down in the barrel and that the noise of the crashing wave falls silent as they experience a sense of awe. She exited the barrel with a score of 9.33 out of 10, as she was deep in the tube, had good speed, and went over the foam ball on her exit.
It's the first time in this event that I ever get that good of waves, so it's like amazing.
The Olympic surfing competition will take place at Teahupo'o from July 27th to August 5th, with a total of 48 surfers, 24 men and 24 women from 21 countries.
Singapore President Tharman Shanmugaratnam says that there is something to learn and appreciate from France's hosting of the Olympics. He cited how the city has not had to build many huge new facilities for the event and instead relies on existing infrastructure. President Tharman says Paris has also seized this chance to speed up efforts to make the city greener, which would have otherwise taken years.
It's not just having the opening ceremony by the River Seine, which is a new concept. And they haven't had to build huge new structures for it. But it was a clever idea. But they've actually made this an Olympics of repair and reuse. They first hosted the Olympics in 1900 and then again in 1924. And then they hosted the World Cup much later. And they've actually reused the original infrastructure.
President Tharman made the comments at an engagement event with the Singapore community in Paris, where he'll attend the Olympic opening ceremony on Friday. While he also wished Team Singapore athletes well at the Games. About 100 people attended the session, including working professionals and students. He adds that ties between Singapore and France are well and strengthening as both countries look to work together in various areas.
And also to make this next year a joint year of sustainability, because we're not just doing things bilaterally in AI and many other areas. We're also wanting to contribute to the world by working on sustainability together. So the relationship is going well. But it was always also a people and culture relationship. It started very early.
And here on CNA, we'll be bringing you coverage of the Paris Summer Olympic Games. MediaCorp and its platforms will air nearly 4,000 hours of sporting action from the 26th of July to the 12th of August. And you can also watch it live on demand and MeWatch. And on that note, it's time to wrap up East Asia tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime. That's CNA.Asia, on CNA 938 Radio. And you can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, and on X. Thanks for watching.